Hello everyone, nubkeks here. Welcome back to Nubraids. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you some practical tips. And we're going to do some, some psychology, some coaching, but also some practical game tips on particular champions you can focus on, etc., and some strategies. Hopefully this is going to be a helpful video to you. We'll see, because Live Arena, they've just added a bunch more rewards to Live Arena. And on top of that, for players level 60 and above, they've now added one of the advanced quests that you're going to have to do if you want to finish your advanced quest for the day, is to win a Live Arena match. So they are trying to push more Live Arena stuff. And I think it's safe to assume that probably next year there will be, I think they've said that there's going to be some more Live Arena updates, which will hopefully make things a bit more fresh and enjoyable and all the rest. But Live Arena, I think, is definitely here to stay. Here's some tips so you can get the most out of it and, be the best at Live Arena that you can be. So obviously, not very helpful, but I suppose you can copy my draft if you happen to have these particular mythicals and you happen to have got lucky and pull souls to them like me, then great, cool, you're in a great spot. Not very helpful. I'm saying that as a joke because, of course, I'm going to try and make this as accessible as possible, of course. So point number one, let's do a bit of psychology first before we dive into the more practical stuff. In case I need to do multiple takes of this video, let's do the more difficult, uncomplicated one at the start. So the psychology of it, I think, a lot of people really hate Live Arena. I think you look at the comment section, people really, really, really hate it. This is something for you to do for yourself. You have to ask yourself, is that hatred for you personally coming from a good spot? Or is it something that you can actually change? Because some of it, to a degree, is up to you to control. So I think, for example, a lot of people hate Live Arena because the times are awkward. And that's totally fair. And there's, unfortunately, nothing you can do about that. It just sucks. Some people just don't like Arena in general, and that's fair enough as well. But I think there's also a chunk of people, and I am absolutely one of them. This is something that is true of me as well, where, you might be a bit competitive, or maybe you get a little bit anxious about things, whichever side of it, or maybe there's other aspects as well. You care a lot about winning and you really don't like losing. That's a pretty common human thing. And I think that's, you need to sit down, or you can sit down if you think that's you and you think it applies, and go, am I skipping out on Live Arena because I am too worried about losing? And, whatever, looking bad, looking silly, just don't like to lose. I'm embarrassed. Now, if that's you, then that's something that you can absolutely control. And yeah, you need to, you can reinterpret that and just not worry about it so much, right? Like, I think you go into some fight, and you're going to have some fights where you go in and you're going to fight against someone that's a much, much bigger spender than you. Maybe you're free to play, maybe you're not, but there's always a bigger fish, right? You're going to run into someone spent way more, and they're just going to destroy you, right? And you can choose to go in and go, F, this game's the worst game. Oh my God, what a waste. I hate that. I'm so angry right now. Or you can just go, yeah, okay, you know what? That guy spent a lot more than me. I'd never had a chance, whatever. GG, go next. Not a big deal, right? You have that choice. And ultimately, again, most of you are not content creators, right? So you have the luxury where really people don't really care what you do. Like, no one's really going to care if that is, if you lost some fights or not. No one really minds what your win rate is. It's only you, right? So it's up to you to decide how much it matters to you, how much you're going to let it control you. It's different when you're a CC. You make a single mistake as a CC, and there's dozens of people that are on the internet and they're very unhappy, and they are just waiting to rip the crap out of you. And like that, I see it all the time, and not just for me, but for every CC. God forbid you should ever make a mistake or do anything less than optimal. So, there's a lot of pressure on a CC to do well and to look good. But for you, you're probably in a position where actually it might be quite chill and it doesn't really matter. And yeah, you can just go in and just say, hey, I'm just going to farm up my stuff. I'm going to lose a bunch of fights. Doesn't really matter. Tip number 2, going into that as well, is understand that matchmaking. Again, especially when you start out. Luckily, they did say that they've improved. I don't know if it's actually true, but they said that they've improved that initial matchmaking. It'll be better for newer players, right? After you've played a bunch of games, the matchmaking should improve, right? It will be tracking your wins and your losses, and it'll have a pretty good idea for how powerful your account is. And this is also important to bear in mind as well. The matchmaking is trying to create a fair fight. What does a fair fight mean? A fair fight means it's roughly 50-50. It's trying to get as close to that as possible. Both players have a great chance to win because you're fighting another player. You're not fighting a bot, right? Usually, you're fighting another player. Sometimes you're fighting bots. You're generally fighting another player. 50-50. You're going to lose a lot of fights, and that's okay. The more fights that you lose, the easier your fights are going to be in the future. On the other hand, the more that you win, the harder your fights are going to be. But that's okay. Again, it's going to try to get you to that 50-50 point. So go in with that expectation. Yeah, I'm going to win some. I'm also going to lose some. And, just give it a shot. That's all you can do. What's the benefit of giving it a shot? Well, there's actually really good rewards, right? Don't get too hung up on feeling bad about losing. It's going to be okay. You will win some, and you're going to get some good rewards. Anyway, that's some psychological stuff. That's obviously not going to apply to everyone, maybe not even a majority of people, but I think there's a decent chunk of people that is probably true for. That's probably like, yeah, you know what, maybe I take it too seriously, and I'm getting really worked up about something that actually I don't need to get all that worked up about. Like I think you look at like Classic Arena and Tag Arena, I think people don't care half as much about just, farming their fights and getting done. It seems to me people do take Live Arena a lot more seriously because it's live. Again, take a step back. It's still the game. It's still really the same sort of thing. It's not a big deal. Let's jump into some practical tips. So here's practical tip number 1. Focus on 5 to... I'd say this is bronze, silver. You could even just literally do 5 to 20 champions max. I have about 20, right? And I would say, as a player, speaking for myself, pretty notorious for building tons of champions and not focusing enough. So you probably really shouldn't go above this, but focus on a small number of champions. The reason is you only have so much gear, especially with damage dealers. It's very obvious. You can only build so many attack-based nukers before your gear starts getting really bad. You can only build champions, like fast champions, so fast before, again, it starts getting really bad. You start going really slow, right? That's all you can do. So focus on a smaller number of champions, and this will let you be consistent with your strategies and just get through the draft quicker as well. Instead of thinking about all these different permutations, it's like, okay, I've got like these 10 champs. I'm going to pick some combination of them and I'm good. Especially for lower levels, I think you can absolutely pick, so here's an example. This would be like a mid-game example. A mid-game player could probably do something like this. Been playing for a few months and hopefully has these champs. But you could do something like, I'm in bronze or silver. There's no exclusive picks like there are in gold. So I can always pick the same stuff. I'm just going to pick Arman's Arbiter, a third support champ, let's say Ultimate Death Knight, then 2 damage dealers, let's say Wukong and Alika. Just always going to pick those in every fight, put my best gear on, and you can mix these up and give you some more suggestions. I'm just always picking the same thing. I'm comfortable with the team, and you can keep it really simple for yourself. You can make it a lot more complicated, and you can pick a lot of different stuff, but you don't have to, You don't have to just to get your fights in and get your stuff going. Keep it simple. To give you an example of the champs that I personally use, I want to make sure this doesn't, like, block the whole fight, because it might be interesting to watch these fights, maybe. I don't know. For me, I actually have many damage dealers. This is mostly because I'm in gold, but you'll see from these fights, I mostly use the same ones. Again, I've got very endgame ones and several pay-to-win ones as well. So I've got 2 mythicals, Lazarius and Frolny. I use Narses a lot. In fact, all 3 of them are in here. I use these 3 nearly all the time, and then Wukong sometimes. And then the others for me are really much more situational. I do use Ragash sometimes, and then I've got a couple of bomb champions. This actually could be an entire tip all by itself. Don't sleep on bombs. Bombs have really come back into the meta at high end recently, thanks to Pinpoint. It's one of those funny things, though. The problem with bombs, mostly, was polymorph. So at high end, because you're talking about whales and krakens, who are, more so the CCs and the big players and the people that show up on leaderboards and stuff that we notice, right? because a lot of them are spending a lot of money, there's tons of 6-star polymorph, and therefore bombs and debuffs and stuff weren't really good. But for most players, you're not running into 6-star polymorph that often. So bombs have been incredibly good, really, I think, for a long time. But because the top players weren't using it, then regular players weren't using it either, because they're saying the top players don't use it, so I'm not going to do it, when in fact it was actually really good. So I think bombs are super good. If you do run into polymorph, of course, you might have some pinpoint gear. Pinpoint gives a lot more safety to bombs, and that's really why they've become a lot more dominant in the top-end meta. What I'm trying to say is, don't sleep on bombs. They give you a big counter, in particular to Stone Skin, and can be very strong. So I personally have 2 bomb champions built. And those are the damage dealers I've got. Again, you can see I've got a mix. Think about this in terms of your gear as well. I can build 2 good attack nukers, then I start to run low on good attack gear. But I've got a couple of HP nukers. I actually have I've got more champions than this, by the way, that I would love to build, but I don't have the gear. This is kind of stretching it. Like my Regash gear, guess what? It's not as good as some of the others. I was looking at building up Carnage, but guess what? Lazarius is taking the best gear. Carnage's gear is a big step down after Lazarius. These are the compromises you have to make. I've got quite a lot of damage there. You probably want less. For control, Armans, Mikage, Yumiko, and Tormen. For speed, I've got Siphon Arbiter. And then protection, Ancora, UDK, Elva, Mithrala. These are the champs I've got built. These are the only ones, by the way, that I really have built. In fact, I have some more. I can show you. Really fast. We'll pause the vid. So I use the tags, by the way, for doing this. But these are, like I said, these are the champs that I use nearly every single arena fight. It's some mix of these. And honestly, I don't really use the Torment or Regash, honestly, that often. It's more the other ones. I'm really just picking from the same few. Like, you'll see in these drafts, I'm just picking Sifi, Lazarius, Fronley in, every fight. Yumiko semi-often, and then I might mix up the final pick a little bit. And Korra and Narcis go in sometimes. And occasionally I'll mix it up with a bomb or whatever. I do have a few other champions that I sometimes use, but these are much lesser, and I try to really avoid them. It's really if I'm stuck. And honestly, this is where the gear becomes a lot worse. Rotus, great champion. I don't have great gear on him, so I just don't I just don't really use him, and so on. These are champs I sometimes use, but I mostly just focus on literally these. That's it, of my whole account. And like I said, for an earlier game player, you probably want to focus on even less than that. Go back to the video. Break down some more tips. So yeah, they're the champs I use. There's a few champs that I will consider bringing into my roster soon. You might have noticed that I've got a Gurgo, a 5-star Gurgo. He's super good now since his buff. Gurgo. But here's the thing. Again, it's a question of gear. I don't quite have the gear for him, so it's not a priority right now. Eventually, maybe. But right now, not a priority. Again, Carnage is there as a maybe for spirit damage. Marius is a big one to definitely bring in, and Freya is definitely one as well. So these are probably the 4 champs I consider adding into my core roster at some point, but it's really a question of gear. And, you can rush to add new champions into your arena teams and then find out, well, you don't actually have the gear to make it work. And yeah, it's why I think as well a variety of damage can be good to make the gear a bit more consistent. Here's something else you're going to notice from these drafts in the background as well. Is I think it's a good idea to get comfy with consistent draft strategies. And I also have to mention, in my last video, I had not thought about something, but I saw a really cool idea I thought it was just so interesting, from a commenter who says that he just goes in and he just leaves arena on full auto. And your initial inclination would be, oh, if you leave the live arena, that is, he just goes full auto picks, full auto fights. And what was interesting about that is you would think, oh, well, if you play on full auto, you're never going to win anything. Well, no. In fact, because of how matchmaking works and because there's a bit of a mercy system in the game, when you lose multiple fights, the matchmaking, I think, tries very strongly to throw you a win. It tries to not let you lose multiple times because people get upset. Genuinely, I think they do that. They've never disclosed that, but I'm pretty sure that's what they do. Because of that, it's crazy that he's actually able to go in and he's up to 4,000 points in live arena. He says he doesn't have a crazy team or anything like that. He does all of his fights every day, and he just leaves it on auto. It doesn't have to play, and so on. Now, you guys did reply, and this is something I hadn't thought about, to that idea. And you guys pointed out, well, it's actually really annoying in the draft or in the fight if people take the entire time for their turn to actually go. That can be very I think the fight's not quite as bad, but definitely in the draft, you're sitting for like the full 60 seconds every time. So I have to backtrack a bit and say I wouldn't then recommend to go full auto. But I think if you put point number 1 and 2 from this notepad together, something you can do, especially in lower levels, right, which is a big chunk of you, just go in, just quickly pick your 5 picks, pick the same thing every fight, and then just click auto when the fight starts, and just sort of stress-free, just go, you know what, I'm not that crazy invested. Like, I'm not letting myself be stressed out about winning or losing. I just want to farm up my stuff, let it go, see how it does, and, you know, just start earning my stuff, right? Earning my zeal, earning my impulse, and I can push further in Hydra. I can get more stone skin accessories and stuff, and then I can build better teams. Like, you can decide to take Live Arena seriously at any point, but just going in, quickly picking your small number of champions, always doing the same thing, keeping it simple, not worrying too much, and just getting through the fight nice and quick can cut out a lot of time. And more importantly, cut out a lot of stress, which probably makes these fights seem much longer and more important and impactful than they actually are. Give you an example of consistent draft strats. I always first pick Armans. If they first pick Armans, here's a great example in the background. I go Lazarius Sifi. Now, you probably don't have Lazarius Sifi. That's what I go. But you can sit down and work out for yourself what your first pick Armans is going to happen, what, half of the time probably against you. Work out what am I going to pick against him, and I'll give you some ideas for that as well. But generally, I think safe, always strong options. At first, like Lazarius Sifi, they're just always good. Armans is nearly always good. You know, these are just dominant picks. They're great to pick up early. Then you can, you know, throw in the bombs or something like that as your final pick where it's more difficult to counter, or like throw in a Torment or something to counter some speed teams, that sort of stuff. These are all strong options. Think about your own roster and just come up with your drafting strategy. And look at what enemies do as well and copy that as well. But I think just keep it simple, right? You don't need to go too crazy and have this super unique draft every time. I actually think keeping it simple and picking the same time, you become comfortable and you get to learn what your team can do. You get through stuff faster. Keep it simple. Don't worry too much about winning or losing. Here's something that is valuable, though, for mixing up a little bit. It's a good idea to have strategies for going first and going second. So, for instance, if I want to go first, so if I see that they're picking a pretty slow team, so like this is a draft where I'm like, I want to go first. And here you go, I actually threw in the Shazar as the final pick. I think going first with Lockout is a really good counter to Armans. And I saw that he picked Ancora Narses. That's like a go second slow team. And same thing with a Freya. They're a slow go second, really apart from Armans. You can see here, I'm mixing this up. I'm saying, ooh, he's got a go second team. I'm going to go first. What am I doing when I go first? Well, I don't have Armans, but that would be something. Try getting Intimidating Presence in there. I have a 6-star Shazar, so I've got a really good version. Multiple speed auras to make sure I go first. Lockout, bombs, and so on. So things that are really strong if I go first. Making sure I go first, and then having things to deal with Stone Skin. So Lockout and bombs, which go through Stone Skin. So like this fight's a great example. And it's a weakness of Armans. This is more, again, end game, maybe late game, certainly end game strategies we're dealing with Armans. But yeah, that's, you know, sort of one sort of option that you will see. Now, if I'm going second, so if I'm going in and I'm like, oh, well, my fast champs are like Sifi Arbiter, you know, like what if they pick Sifi Arbiter for, I'm like, okay, I'm not that fast. He's going to be faster than me. Then I start looking at things like Polymorph, Temporal Chains, having everyone in Stone Skin's a big deal. Mythicals are really strong because if you get locked out, they can shapeshift. So that's obviously more of a luxury thing. Stone Skin arguably as well. Arguably, all of these are luxury, unfortunately. Cleanse Champions. Oh, excuse me. I've jumped off there. Nukers that are tanky. This is where HP and defensive nukers are good, where they can actually take a hit potentially. That sort of stuff becomes important. Again, like you have to get lucky with the champs that you get. So like, for example, right here, I've got Armans. He's gone pretty fast. So this becomes like more of an interesting, who's the faster champ? Who's the faster team? And this is where having multiple speed auras. Okay, now I'm kind of going, oh, this guy's definitely going first. He's got 2 good speed auras. They've got Intimidating Presence and like High Blessings. He's got the 6-star Mikage. very tough to not to go first here, for instance, right? So thinking about that in the draft, if you want to alternate things a bit, can be valuable. For countering Armans, by the way, here's a few tips for, I think, to counter Armans. Number one, just ban him. That's your most straightforward solution. Number two, lockout's really good. If you're faster than Armans, you lock him out. Nothing you can do. Number three, having everyone in Stone Skin means he can't do his A2. He has to A3, but he can only do it to somebody. Now, he can still remove. Who did I pick here, by the way? Oh, you see, I actually am thinking of going first. Interest. I don't remember this fight. That's a bold move. I like it. But yeah, full Stone Skin can be a way to deal with it. And then pinpoint accessories can be good as well, especially with Stone Skin. It's something I've seen a little bit. People with like 4-piece pinpoint, 4-piece Stone Skin. Is if you've got the 4-piece pinpoint buff, intercept, Armans can't polymorph you, right? So if you're under Stone Skin, he can't polymorph you, so you're fine. So he can't touch you then in that circumstance. So that protects you from the stun and the polymorphs. That can be an option. Force Affinity, so he weak hits with his A2, is also a possibility. So those are some ideas to counter him. Again, a lot of the time, you're probably going to have to ban him. But yeah, these are also potential options that you can do. Here's some good free champions that you can use as well. So I've given you a lot of options for damage dealers here that I think are good and are pretty common and accessible. Ah, I see what happened. Oh, we need to switch to another video. Hang on, give me a sec. Okay, we're going in with some more fights. Luckily, I recorded some extra. That's lucky. Where was I? Some damage options. Again, you would not build all of these. You're not going to have the gear, but these are some options. So Wukong, most people have him from promo code. Really good attack option, and he keeps coming back with his passive. Thor, top tier recent fusion for attack. He's not a great arena champion, but he's fine. And here's the thing. You probably have really good gear on Thor for like dungeons and campaign farming and Hydra. So throwing him in, using him as one of your arena and damage dealers is, I think, totally fine. I would pick out Alika as probably, in my opinion, the best epic damage dealer in the game. I think she's phenomenal. Force Affinity, big damage, and she also brings a lockout, which is really strong. Nishak was a fusion, and they did a guaranteed for him with bombs. Phoenix, an epic, who brings in block revive. That can be really nice. Morag is good. Again, she's just turned up now as a guaranteed champion eventually from Plarium play points. She's a great defensive nuker. Magnar is a good HP nuker. Again, these two aren't like top tier, but they're fine beginner champions. And then endgame, Marius is totally OP, and Carnage is really good as well. They're sort of guaranteed endgame champions. I've just got Carnage. I'm close to Marius. You know, that's very far away, but it's something to aim for, and you should definitely use them if you've got them, I think. For control, Armans, obviously. Mikage, when you get her, probably in the late game. Basher and Alika are two really good options for lockout that are epic. Basher is Void, so he's more reliable. Alika is Force, but Alika has a really good damage as well, so she can be both a damage and a lockout, so they're good options. For speed, Arbiter, obviously. Aestrid, you saw someone else use her there, like, you know, in gold, whatever, live arena. Aestrid, I think, is a really good option. Again, a fusion from this year, a really good speed champion. Similar to Arbiter, speed boosting, increased attack. Yeah, she's actually really solid. Protection, here are some, I think, interesting, more free-to-play friendly options. Ancora, fusion from earlier in the year, really strong. She gives you a bit of a counter to lockout with her A1. Mithrala, obviously her passive is great in cleansing and shielding. UDK, if you've got him. Helicath is definitely an older fusion, but a lot of people use him. He can be great. Here's a couple of epic options that are interesting. Maneater, definitely a niche one. You might have Maneater built relatively fast for like a clan boss team. You can actually be okay in arena for unkillable and helping you survive through some stuff you otherwise wouldn't. Again, a very budget option, but interesting. Cardinal is actually another interesting one. Really high resistance. She can be a brilliant counter to bombs, right? If they're going in and relying on accuracy, you can just put her in super high resistance. They can't kill her, and then she revives your whole team, and you can kill them. So, yeah, there you go. Hopefully, these tips have been somewhat interesting. Let me know what other tips you guys have. But yeah, try to keep it simple. Focus on a small number of your best champions. And listen, if you say, Nub, my champions aren't as good as a lot of other players. Or Nub, you know, I've not spent any money. I'm early game. I'm fighting players that are better. Don't lose heart, right? Don't lose heart. The matchmaking will keep updating. you'll start fighting easier stuff. You will be fighting stuff more on your level soon. Just don't expect to come in and win every single fight. Like, that will happen when you're climbing up. You know, like if you spend a bunch of money, then sure, yeah, you're gonna start winning for a while, but it's not gonna last forever. There's always a bigger fish, and the more you win, the more you're gonna fight those bigger fish, and you can have a really tough time. So there you go. Let me know what you think. Let me know any tips that you have. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.